wherever you might be coming from. I am excited to welcome you to our next session. This session is called, as you can see, the Framework for Harm Reduction in Service Learning. And I'm thrilled to welcome our three guests, Dr. Emily Meadows, who is an LGBTQ plus consultant for international schools. We welcome Tawana Merritt, the Service Learning Coordinator at the American International School at Johannesburg. And we also welcome Hooken Gould, a teacher and service learning coach at the Shanghai Community International School in Shanghai, China. So we're really thrilled to have our guests. Welcome aboard. Take it away.
Great to have everyone here. Also want to acknowledge our colleague, Emily Zine, who was a big contributor to this framework. She's not able to be here today, but a major part of the team. So we only have 60 minutes. We want to do this. We want to really pack this for you all. So we're going to dig straight in, give you a sense of our session flow. So we'll ask you, first of all, to think about your why, and then we'll go straight into the framework. It's a tool that we are going to introduce to you that you'll be able to take away and apply directly into your practice. We will invite you to unpack it a little bit with us and then practice using it so that you have some hands-on application. And then we will finish up with a debrief and a little group discussion. If you are watching this as a recording, please note that the discussion groups themselves are not going to be recorded here, just to protect the privacy of the live participants. But if you are watching this as a recording, we really recommend trying to do this with colleagues, and that way you can also engage in discussion with your colleagues when prompted. So you can just pause the recording, have that discussion live with your colleagues, and then resume after that.
Hi, everyone. As Julie said, I'm Tawana Merritt. I'm at the American International School here in Johannesburg, South Africa. And we're just wondering, what is your why? We'd love to see you put in the chat, maybe a bit about where you're from, what your role is, and what is your reason for joining us today? Why are you connecting into this session, to this forum? And the overall theme around harm reduction is something that we're talking about in this session. And we know that people showed up for different reasons. And we'd like to hear why. So we'll give you a moment to drop that in the chat so that we can have our session be a little bit interactive with our participants. Thanks. And just before we move on to our own approach to, or our own reasoning behind this, which you're going to hear about our what, why, how, and who, we're just a group of educators who got together who are passionate around harm reduction in international school settings. And we recognize that some of our work will be focused on that demographic of people, but we also feel that this work can be across any community and adapted for your particular organization or school. So it's a practical tool that guides school communities to center harm reduction as a lens through which to approach all service work. We offer ongoing reflective framework to deepen the intentionality of values and impact made during service learning in international schools. And like I said before, in any school or organization. So that is our what.
Our why, it's lovely to read. Thank you for those of you putting your why into the chat. Our why is that we aim to foster international school service learning through setting students and their school communities up for lifelong contributions and engagement with real-world issues in a sustainable way. So this tool addresses how ethics, power, privilege, and identity may increase or reduce harmful practices associated with service learning. So it's really all about harm reduction for us. That's our why. And then our how is that we offer you this tool and we invite you to, when considering an existing or potential service learning experience, you walk through the flow chart, which we will share with you shortly. You'll walk through it step by step. We sort of hold your hand as you walk through. And you do this with members of your community. And we really encourage you to include students in the process. And so maybe it's a planning committee or the group that will be doing the service learning, and to really walk through and engage in the discussion together. Your critical and honest answers to each question will invite you to either carry on to the next step of the flow chart, or guide you to relevant resources so you can investigate further to and develop that particular area.
Sorry, I'm just reading all of these like answers. But for the who, I am Håkon from SEIS. And so who is this tool for? It's for those that support members in our schools and our potential partners. Is to understand their current and potential impact on these important global issues of this realm of service learning. And this tool was made specifically like to be used by international schools, but it's also in this in form as well. And we seek to build more effective experiences that promote responsibility, accountability, and humanity for everyone involved. So I think we can go to the next slide. So we especially had teachers and coordinators in mind when we were like developing this tool, but it's relevant to students as well. And as a note, while we have worked hard on this over the last few months, or has it been over a year already? I feel like we've just been on Zoom calls for so long, a like positive out of COVID. And then like when it comes to, but we do not consider ourselves, quote, the experts. It's a learning journey. It's been amazing to learn and grow with these three amazing like educators, and it's a living document. So it's meant to be a reflective tool to get us to think more deeply about the ways, all the ways that harm can manifest. Sorry, I'm just going to pause for a moment and let us all just read a few more of the whys. I'm just going to wait for a second. I'm reading through these. Hello, Katie. Hello, Julie. Hello, Laurel. Okay, I'm just going to keep on. All right, so for the instructions on how would you use this tool, right? So in terms of number one, gather the documentation, and whether that is a unit plan or like school documents. And number two, bring together your team, including students. Number three is discuss each question in a purposeful way. There are 10, spoiler alert, and it goes in sort of a flow chart like model. And number four, to reflect and gather the evidence and use these like resources and some like hyperlinks for support. And you can see there also in terms of that little asterisk, this tool, it can be used to audit your entire school like program, or even just a single experience according to your school, and your context and your needs. We definitely strongly encourage you to use this before embarking on a service learning experience, but also it's supposed to be an ongoing process post experience as well. So I'm about to drop into the chat, but not yet. But like once we do, it's going to, like, you will see that our tool looks a little bit like this. So as an example, on question number one, it's going to ask you, and if your school has a clear definition about this realm and what it means, and is it understood, along with, if you see like down here, it's got how does this experience also like connect to your school mission, like vision, or DEIJ like commitment. And for today, like we're going to assume it's going to be a yes, but you could also like notice how on the left-hand side, it's or could be a not yet, and you would have a bunch of hyperlinks here that you could wade through. And then if we go on to the next slide on number 2, this is a question that asks more about the frameworks and how you do a little bit of progress, like monitoring overall. Again, for today, we're going to also assume yes, but again, you would be doing this in a bit more extensive way. And I know that we're going a bit like quickly now, and because we want some of the extra time for our like breakout rooms, but I'm going to actually pause and ask Emily and Tawana if you would like to just add anything on these last 2 slides and before I pass it off to the next 2. No? So then in that case, is it okay if I like drop in the links? What do you think? Here's this.
Okay, so we have we have our instructions for the breakout room. Before you get stuck into looking at the links that Hakan sent, so just some instructions for you to make this go smoothly. And also, we only are going to give you about 15 minutes, unfortunately. So it's going to have to be a little bit quick, but go through each of the questions you are analyzing, the answer yes or not yet, as Hakan already explained to you. Where is the potential harm in this scenario, if any? You'll be given 4 different scenarios. And it says, feel free to share anecdotal evidence from your own experiences, but we probably don't have time for that. We're trying to get you into rooms of 4 or 5, and then we will kind of roll along from there. So prepare. So one person from your group, please prepare to share out at the very end when we come back. We might even have that dropped in the chat. We'll just see how we're going for time. And then we'll do a bit of a Q&A and a wrap up. So just for time's sake, we're going to ask the person with the first initial closest to A to choose your scenario. When you open up the document, you'll see that there are 4 different types of scenarios to choose from. And just to save us time, the person with their name closest to the letter A in the alphabet, you get to decide on which scenario you'd like to go through. So have a quick look through them and then start your discussion using the tool as a guide to help you through. You might want to just jump straight to number 3 in the tool, because as we said, number 1 and 2, we're just going to assume yes for the purposes of the presentation. And then at a later time, you'll have all the time you need to pursue this if you're looking at it with your team back in your own school or organization. So Emily, can we go to the next slide? And we have, if you have your phone, you can do the QR code, or you can simply use the link that was shared in the chat a moment ago. And
Just
as we welcome everyone back into the space, we hope you had great conversations around your scenarios. We're inviting everyone to add your summation to the chat for everyone to see, because unfortunately, we won't be able to hear from everyone verbally, but what we are going to do is ask someone to share out from each of the room, or sorry, from each of the scenarios, 1 to 4. And yeah, there is never enough time for all of these, but this is just a teaser and a taster for you. And hopefully you'll use this when you move to spaces beyond this platform to continue this conversation and discussion. For breakout room number 1, or not breakout, we're calling it breakout room number 1, but for those of you who chose to look at scenario number 1, a grade level travels out of the country on an annual week-long service trip to build houses. Is there anyone who would like to verbally share out a summary from your discussion if you chose that scenario? You can simply unmute yourself and share.
Hi. Hi, my
Hi.
name's Laurel. And we kind of just chatted. But we did chat about the question posed. So one of the things that we discussed was just the terminology of mission trip and how that's a very loaded term. So I work at a Catholic school, Catholic high school, and just figuring out how to tease apart what is the heart of what the mission is and the purpose, versus an immersion trip, whether that be a cultural immersion or, just thinking about like the books Toxic Charity and When Helping Hurts. David in our group mentioned a really neat article called I'm Here to Help. So we did not get to unpack it as further than that, but we really only got through the first question. I don't know if anybody else in our group wanted to add to that, David or Ananya. So that's all we have for now then.
I would
Thank
just
you.
add that it all starts internally and doing your own internal work before you reach out. And there's so much work each one of us needs to do inside ourselves.
Thank you both. For breakout room number 2 or scenario number 2, there was a description of advisory/homerooms participate in a school-wide fundraising drive for holiday gifts for local families. The class that fundraises the most wins a class party. And you're asked to analyze questions 4 and 8 on the tool. Anyone want to summarize from that group?
Hi, so we spoke a little bit about the description in our group, and for number 4, it was asking about what was the root cause. And we said with the little information, we didn't have a true root cause. So we didn't know, like, could it be poverty that they were giving it holiday gifts for? Was that the reason for it? Or maybe it was just a gift drive. So he said we didn't know exactly, but it could be a range of things. And that kind of led us into number 8 as well, when it asked, would it have a long-term impact for the students? And we said that depending on the answer to number 4, it could, if the students have a good reason, or maybe a reason that they can resonate with. For example, maybe there was a community fire that affected a lot of families, and the gift drive was for those families. And I think that we thought that the students could have a long-term impact from that, as they know the reason and they're able to resonate with that. But as far as if the students are just doing it for a party and don't really know the true reason behind what's going on and the reason for the gift drive, there might not be such a long-term impact. But that's pretty much what we spoke about.
Thanks so much. And we can move on to breakout room number 3 or scenario number 3, which was an after-school club plans a school-wide initiative focused on improving health and well-being in their school community. And they were asked to analyze number 3 and 6 on the tool. Is there anyone who would like to share out? I saw there was a summary in the chat, and I'm wondering if there's another group who looked at that one and would like to share out.
So we were group breakout room 5, but we did scenario 3. And we talked about the importance of culturally appropriate food, and how to get food education and prevent language barriers so everybody has access. We talked about kind of learning these topics in health class, PE, and working with mental health professionals to also help promote health and well-being, because oftentimes mental health is neglected to be mentioned in health education. And we think lots of listening to students is involved, to seeing what food students eat in their culture, so we can gain an understanding of diverse foods and what works with them. Like it doesn't really make sense to give somebody a vegetable. They don't know how to cook it. They don't know how to prepare it. They never even heard of it, right? So, seeing what people eat and seeing, just working with people, seeing what works for them.
Thank you for that. Breakout room number 4, or scenario number 4, a group of students volunteer to partner with a local school for a reading buddies program, and you are asked to analyze questions 7 and 9 of the tool. Is there anyone who would like to share out about a summary from your discussion?
I can do that for our group. Laura, Beatty, Carrie, and I discussed a group of students volunteered to partner with a local school for Reading Buddies program. And one of the things that Beatty pointed out was the impact statement. So what are the goals that we would want to achieve, and what safety considerations, both in person and in line. If we're on Zoom, or does everybody have access to it? Would students be seeing into somebody's home, which might not be a safe scenario for either party? Who's determining the curriculum? What literacy level do the volunteers have? What literacy level do the students who are being partnered with? The positives we saw were building relationships and community with in those situations, but there's a lot of a thought that would need to go into how that is planned with both the students who are being teamed up with, the volunteers, the teacher, the community, and the people who are planning the event. We looked at question so that was question number 7. We answered question number 8 rather than 9. Forgive us. Will the experience have a sustainable long impact on students' preparation and potential for effective, responsible, lifelong service within their community? I think it's being respectful of the community that we're going into, but there's an opportunity for partnership as long as both adults and students on both ends are heard and respected and have input, and the opportunity of everyone having better literacy and building relationships felt like a key opportunity, as long as harm reduction was taken into consideration.
Thank you, Anna, and there is no need to apologize. This is just sparking some discussion and hoping to start some conversations. I know that this is just the tip of the iceberg, like we said. There is so much more to be discussed on all of these, and we hope that you'll take the tool and that you'll go through each one by one. Although for the sake and purposes of this presentation, we were just drilling it down to each group doing 2. But we definitely invite you to continue on and to use the entire, use the entire tool. So I think we're going to start our wrap up now, and we just have one more discussion point. Please feel free to keep interacting in the chat and sharing your thoughts about those scenarios and your great conversations that came up during the breakout session. And I think I can share my screen for this part. So just for our closing discussion, and again, feel free to add in the chat for this. How did your discussions help you reflect on practices and strategies for potentially reducing harm? And I'll just give people a moment to add that. If anyone would like to unmute, you're welcome to do that as well.
I can unmute, I can participate. Hi.
Oh, sure.
Is I think that I worked on the Christmas on the holiday gift drive. It's that which because our kids are not like the students are not really directly in harm. But I do think that the way that we post service learning experiences or community service experiences, they might, the harmful thing that could happen would be that we might send a different message, which is like a white savior or more like a sympathy based action instead of an empathy or compassionate action. So I think that's my takeaway, at least from my discussion when planning these type of activities.
Thank you, Gabriela. Our second closing discussion question for you all to reflect on, and again, feel free to add in the chat. How do you see this tool aligning or conflicting with your cultural and geographic context or your school's mission or philosophy? This is a very meaty question, I know, but it's one that we think is worth really deeply reflecting on and thinking about in our ecosystems of schools and organizations. This is a really important one. So if anyone is happy to unmute and do a little share out, you are welcome to do that. Otherwise, we will gladly take your responses in the chat. And question number 3, oops, sorry. Did someone want to speak? I was trying to do my teacher wait time, but okay, I'll move on to question number 3. How do you see this tool being used in your school's community? And I would love for someone to unmute and share if you can already see a use for this tool in your school community.
Hi, I'm Jen Landers. I'm happy to share. We're not a school, we're actually an after-school program for high school students. And each year we onboard a number of mentors that work with our students on their service learning projects. And I can see this tool being just a baseline onboarding opportunity for our mentors and giving them a couple of scenarios so that they can intentionally work through the amazing list of resources you've provided.
Thank you so much, Jen, for sharing. I'm gonna keep it moving. Thank you all so much for the great discussion around that. I'm gonna hand it back over to, I think, Miss Emily.
You can call me Dr. Meadows or Emily, but I don't go by Miss Emily.
Sorry, Emily.
So we wanted to acknowledge that this tool was really a collaboration with a number of people who helped to strengthen it, and just name these people here, and you will also find them acknowledged at the end of the activity pack. So we offer thanks to them, and also our contact information. So should you have any questions around our work or any follow-up for us, please do feel free to get in touch. These are our handles on socials, but I will also put my email in the chat, and my colleagues might do the same in case you need anything from us following the presentation. And then we will end with a tribute to the phenomenal Audre Lorde, and a quote that, the drum roll, Tiwana, you have the slide ready? A quote, "The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house." And we hope that you will think of this framework as a new tool and a new way to consider service learning that allows for a safer experience for all participants and a more equitable and sustainable way to think about service learning in our communities. So I think what we'll do is stop here and just open up this space for any questions or feedback that you might want to offer us. We're really happy to hear the voices of the rest of the wisdom and the voices of the rest of this group. You can, if you are more comfortable being called on, you can raise your little Zoom hand. There's in the reactions at the bottom toolbar, you can usually raise your hand, or feel free to unmute. We're a small enough group.
I'm willing to speak out here. In response to being shown these tools. This isn't my, super duper area of expertise, although I do work with teachers and students around the world. Harm reduction isn't something I've learned a lot about. So I think just sharing out these questions, just to see the questions, not even maybe to know how to answer them, or, it's a way to start by recognizing that these are, in fact, questions that we should be asking ourselves and fellow teachers and students and all of those that we work with. So for me, I think today has been really eye-opening in that I think it just showed me the kinds of questions that we can begin looking at and discussing, which the tool is wonderful and hopefully I'll get to use it. But I think for me, it was more just eye-opening to even look at the kinds of questions and discussions we should be having in the first place.
Suji, thank you for that. That's a really powerful piece of feedback and insight, and I'm so glad that it was impactful for you in that way. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Other voices from the group, we'd love to hear your thinking. Or questions.
Someone in the earlier session mentioned jumping to the solution, that there's very much that volunteerism, let's just fix it. And service learning is such an amazing tool, but I find that a lot of adults and sometimes youth want to jump to the shortcut. Do you have any thoughts about using this tool and the service learning tool in a way that does not feel overwhelming? Because I think sometimes people are like, the fix seems easy, the thoughtfulness seems hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that we also recognize exactly that sort of trap that you're talking about. And it comes from a place of good intentions and acknowledging that the impact can sometimes be harmful is part of why we developed this tool. Honestly, we're hoping that the tool itself is almost like, it serves many purposes, but one of them can be almost like a speed bump, where if you are forced, that sounds really awful. If you choose to engage with the framework and you're walking through each step and being asked to provide evidence of your answer, or to engage with the resources if you aren't sure about the answer, that exercise in and of itself, we hope will sort of slow down the process and that sort of knee-jerk reaction to fix it, right? And to see to see ourselves as somehow the fixers, right? As somehow the ones with the answers. So hopefully that will be able to support you in that. I don't know, Tawana or Hakan, if you also had some thoughts about that, and then we'll move on to Kate after.
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts. One is using the NYLC's IPARD method or the 5 stages of service learning, as well as there's been a tool that's been developed by NYLC that is similar around being ready to engage in service learning. So I would say seek out their resources, because that will help you in the reflection phase. And some of those resources might be within our tool as well as one of the documents that you can look at to get more information.
Yeah, I'm like, I was just going to add and just echo from like the panel earlier, as well as now in these sessions, this idea about like these words just like keep on like coming back up in terms of purpose, intentionality, slow, and like deliberate. That's really what builds a like sustainable long-term like program as well, and not just these like one-off experiences that just kind of do a lot harm, like more harm than good a lot of the time. So it might not be a popular opinion with perhaps at first, but it's just a matter of just having more and more like discussions, and perhaps like not using like this whole tool all at once in like the first meeting with like with a colleague or with administration or with like a partner. But I loved how you mentioned, and Suji mentioned earlier, just even like the questions about perhaps here's one question, and you do a little bit of a slow rollout with a select group. Yeah, I would say.
Thank you.
And I actually, if it's okay to jump in now, I just wanted to comment on that because I work with future problem solving. And I did what we call community problem solving projects as a student, and I work with them now as an adult after a decade in schools. And what we're missing is that harm reduction framework to support coaches and talking to students. But what we teach students is that process of going from looking at a community and seeing problems they want to solve. And then there are multiple steps before they can even attempt action. They design their own projects based on problems they identify, which makes it very purposeful and engaging for students and develops a lot of agency. But I'm really excited to share this framework with the adults, some of our more experienced coaches, so that they can talk to their students about this, because we have seen projects, and I personally have denied students from pursuing projects where they were going to cause more harm than good. So I'm just really glad I attended, because I see a lot of blend with what we do, and that this could be a support for our students and coaches. So thank you.
We did also have a question in the Q&A that asked, they were curious to hear ideas about how or when to introduce students to the concepts that wanting to help isn't enough, and without intentional planning, there's a possibility for harm.
It depends on what age group, I would say, but one of the great ways I like to engage students in thinking about that process is by showing them videos, and usually like satirical videos or funny videos, just to get the conversation started and getting them to think about what harm can be potentially caused, or what things are we trying to address in this video that relate to what we are trying to do in real life. And I definitely, particularly the high schoolers, talk to them about it is not our role to save or to rescue anyone, and that these communities have been dealing with and engaged in these issues a lot longer than we've been on the planet, and that all we can hope to do is to help support the work that's already happening and build on that to continue moving whatever work that they've decided to move that forward. Because in most cases, in my situation, our students and staff are not from these communities, and so they only know maybe a part of the issue or problem, or they're so removed from it that they're just asserting their own assumptions onto something that's happening.
Really good point.
I want to be mindful of the time and honor everyone's breaks. So thank you so much for joining us and engaging, for being courageous and staying in during. We know that not always you don't always expect to go into a breakout room during a conference, and we hope it was worth it for you. We've put our contact information in the chat, and it's also at the bottom of the activity packet if you have any sort of follow-up questions for us. Tawana or Hakan, do you want to say any last words?
No, I just want to say also and thank you for having us here. And like the pack is also in like development as well, right? So we are like, we do plan on to like work on this more and more and add more resources. So it's more of it's a living document, as we had mentioned earlier. So
Thanks, everyone. I'm going to hand it back over to Julie from NYLC or Amy to close out this session. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. This was a very robust and important conversation. I always think the intentions and motivations of why we want to help fix or serve are very important.